Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. As you can probably tell by the sound of my voice, I am quite sick right now. And frankly, it is agonizing. I am one of those people that just cannot handle being sick whatsoever. But you know what? James Harden is on the move and this is my job, so we're gonna power through it. That said, I apologize for sounding like this because it's kind of gross. But anyways, James Harden has picked up his player option with the intention of having the Philadelphia 76ers trade him, and the two teams that are pretty much the only teams in the rumors right now are the Clippers and the New York Knicks. After the Rockets had the draft that they did, I think it became more and more obvious that the idea of getting James Harden just really does not make sense, especially given all the guard play that exists on that team now with Amen Thompson, with obviously Jalen Green before that. I think Cam Whitmore has some guard stuff. I'm not a big prospect guy, but I think that's the case. You know, creation type stuff. Obviously, you've already got plenty of creation from your center, who is the C plus Nikola Jokic. So I didn't think they really needed the playmaking. I didn't really think they needed the veteran presence necessarily, because I don't know if James Harden necessarily brings an air of maturity around him. And it just seemed like it would be getting in the way of the young core for no reason other than, I guess, to sell tickets and win 15 more games. So I'm not surprised to find that Houston did not end up being the place that he would go, but I am a little bit surprised by the Clippers rumors. The Knicks, they have been trying to get their foot in the door just in regard to kind of any star player. They've obviously also been rumored for Paul George, but the Clippers is interesting. First of all, I'm quite confident that the trade would not be for Paul George, because as far as I am concerned, Paul George is better than James Harden. The only reason you would conceivably make a move like that is to clear salary, but I think Paul George has like 2 more years on his deal than James Harden does. So I don't think that's it. I think they're kind of just going to put together every contract necessary to get to 36 million, obviously excluding the contracts of Kawhi and Paul George. And I don't know what they have much in the terms of assets. I mean, Terrence Mann's already like 26, 27 at this point. I feel like he's not even really a young guy anymore. So I don't know necessarily what the Sixers are going to get out of this deal in terms of actual tangible stuff. They'll probably, I guess they could get a couple of role players, and whether or not that would matter in any capacity is entirely up to how Joel Embiid reacts to this, because that's something I want to expand on more, and we'll probably expand on a main channel video once James is finally moved. But like, as good as Tyrese Maxey is, I don't know if he's your second option yet, and a bunch of solid role players plus Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid, it's just not enough, man. I really just don't think it's enough. I would not even be surprised if we got some huge leap from Tyrese Maxey, specifically because James Harden's no longer there. I did feel as though Harden would be a little bit limiting to Tyrese, although at the same time, he did allow Tyrese to expand more as an off-ball player, which is an important ability to develop, and he definitely did. But either way, it's just clearly not enough to compete regardless of what you would get back from James Harden. So I feel there's a very strong chance that Joel Embiid might ask out, not necessarily this offseason, because he definitely gives the impression he's very committed to Philadelphia. It's not like he seems fake about liking Philadelphia. He very much seems to. But at the same time, you know, he's probably going to care enough about winning, and I think Joel Embiid is smart enough to look at that roster and say, yeah, this is just not enough. I don't think it was enough with James Harden, so it's sure as shit not going to be enough with, I don't know, who do the Clippers even have at this point? They've traded a lot of their role players recently, like Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, the Zubats maybe, you know, and obviously I don't need a big man in that case, but you know, just throwing names out there. It's not going to be a great return, and I don't think the Sixers are going to be able to be a legitimate contender, even with Joel Embiid being Joel Embiid. So I do think there's a good chance this means Embiid's on the move, which is frankly a lot more exciting than James Harden. But let's talk about the Knicks and the Clippers specifically and what that fit would look like. In the case of the New York Knicks, I don't necessarily love it. I definitely think he's less necessary to New York than he would be to the Clippers, which doesn't necessarily make sense because, of course, the Knicks are far behind in terms of the talent deficit to the Clippers. However, in terms of needs the Clippers have had over the past few years, James Harden absolutely solves those issues, which is playmaking, and then even though though he has had some injury stuff himself, obviously, it's another guy who can, you know, win you basketball games when Kawhi or Paul George are sitting out. You know, sometimes it'll be James Harden sitting out, and they'll have Paul George or Kawhi or whatever. Either way, I think the Clippers, it makes a ton of sense, even if you do have to give up a decent amount of depth. Like a Norman Powell is someone who would probably be moved. It's cool. I think it's worth it. You just, you know, keep a couple of solid defensive players around. Hopefully you would keep Zubac, and that's a very, very good starting lineup, and hopefully solid depth with a very good coach. And then even still, it will come down with the Clippers to if they're healthy. But that said, the if they're healthy thing looks a lot more guaranteed to be dominant than the if they're healthy of the past, which was even when the Clippers were healthy, they didn't necessarily look like some super dominant basketball team. When Kawhi and PG play together, they have like a 60% something win percentage, which is good, but ultimately not like terrifyingly good. And I don't think James Harden would make them even reach the point of terrifyingly good, but they'd be a lot closer to it than otherwise. So it makes a lot of sense for the Clippers. For the New York Knicks, I'd be all for it if you're trading Julius Randle. Otherwise, I just don't love it. Of course, the Knicks are a very ISO heavy offense, and they could use some playmaking. That's definitely an area that we're lacking in. They were bottom 3 in assists, and I think I guess it's worthy of mention because I haven't necessarily strictly said it at this point. I primarily view James Harden's value as a playmaker because his scoring has just been so wishy-washy, so inconsistent, and like 20 points per game in the modern NBA, isn't that nuts? Like Norman Powell will match most of James Harden's point production if he was traded to the Sixers, but playmaking, that's a whole nother animal, and the Knicks could definitely use it, but I just wonder how effective Jalen Brunson's going to be under these circumstances. I think the fit with Julius Randle there among those two as well is awkward. I feel like you'd probably get RJ Barrett back in this deal, and for the Sixers, like RJ potentially could be cool in a new environment, but it wouldn't be next to Joel Embiid. I mean, obviously for $36 million for 1 year of James Harden and giving up probably contracts that you don't even want. In the case of the Knicks, it'd be like Evan Fournier, and then like I think the worst you'd have to give up is like Quentin Grimes. So it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor to explore, but I don't necessarily think this will be super earth-shattering for them. I feel like I would still think the Knicks are probably a second round exit, and this would not change that. But for the Clippers, I do think that is a potentially like league-altering move. I think it's really the only circumstance in which James Harden going somewhere is league-altering other than how it affects Joel Embiid's future. So yeah, very interesting. I felt like him to the Rockets was kind of BS the whole way through. I made a video fairly recently discussing the potential of him going to Houston and just why it didn't really make sense for either party. And as much as it was talked about, I am not at all surprised that when push came to shove, when it's actually time for James Harden to go somewhere else, Houston was not his destination. For Philly, this is rough. You committed a lot to get James Harden only for him to leave after 2 years, 2 disappointing years at that. Basically a year and a half. It's not exactly the best, and the process has been kind of a disaster. Didn't feel good about them in this year's playoffs, but they managed to disappoint even more significantly than I think they otherwise would have, because they should have beat Boston. There's no way around it. They should have beat Boston, and they didn't. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. I'm gonna go take a nap.